In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Welcome to Be the Wellness Podcast, where we help you master your body, mind, and the experience of life through insightful conversation, interviews with experts and thought leaders, all with a side of marital banter and some good old-fashioned humor.
Yes, we are your hosts, Adam and Vanessa Lambert, and we're committed to helping you live life fully expressed physically, mentally, and experientially. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation.
Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast. Adam and Vanessa Lambert here, podcasting.
We are officially podcasting and super stoked because we've got an awesome conversation today, which
do.
is really like, we'll just come out and we'll say what it's about. We won't keep you guessing out there. But, this is an interview that we did with the owner and the founder of SaunaSpace, which, I was sort of like incorrect in my assumption that the SaunaSpace was really just kind of like a smaller version of a sauna. Right. And what we learned today is that it's actually so much more than that, and that there's so much more going on that, this type of isolation, quote unquote, and treatment and sort of focus on eliminating some of the obstacles that in the health toxicants that are in our lives every single day that are hard to avoid is kind of another part of what this whole system offers, which was really cool. It was a really awesome conversation.
Yeah, it was illuminating.
It was illuminating. Oh, well played.
And there were some visuals with the whole thing.
Yes.
And as you may or may not know, we're doing these things live on video.
We are.
And we'll put a link to that. You can check it out on our Facebook page and watch this. Listen/watch it, because it's kind of nice to see, A, who's talking, and B, when he's talking about the lights, and we get into some of the flicker stress stuff, and it's cool. The visual reference is cool.
Yeah, it's nice. And by no means will you be lost if you are in your car right now or, want to walk listening to the podcast. Right. But like you said, it is nice to see the visuals and check out what's going on there with some of the information that he presents. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And so we are, of course, talking about the founder, Brian Richards. And he's a born tinkerer. He's cobbled together his first sauna from scavenged parts and chicken wire, but within days of near, so this is the near infrared sauna, right. So it's NIR, near. His insomnia vanished. He also began to notice something strange. His brain fog, which he didn't even know that he had lifted. Yeah. Right. And so this is something that we see, right? Yeah. You're like, you don't even know until it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, do you have brain fog? You're like,
I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
And then it goes away and you're like, oh, yes.
Oh, actually.
I actually totally had brain fog.
Yeah. No, which is like we find this so often with all of these health things that you're like, oh, yeah, maybe I wasn't optimized as much as I thought I was.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Paleo and keto people are familiar with that, so it's one of those things. And so then once his fog lifted, he started thinking, he's like, what should I do with this whole thing?
Yeah.
And here we go.
Once you have discovered the way, like all good leaders, you must find your disciples.
Well, and you figure it out, right?
Yeah,
so it's
totally.
like he built something to solve a problem that he had.
Right.
And then ended up solving problems that he didn't know he had, and was like, damn, we're kind of onto something.
Right.
And he does a great job of laying it out in the podcast, kind of the history of incandescent light and its, potential therapeutic uses for us. And it's interesting stuff. It's pretty cool. And honestly, much like you, I thought that I knew quite a bit about what we were talking about.
Right.
And it turns out this stuff just hasn't really been studied.
Right.
It's so if you're looking for peer-reviewed, randomized controlled trials, they're not there yet.
Right.
But, and he does a great job of articulating it in the podcast and kind of laying it out. Like it's in the why not space.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, okay, yeah, I see how these mechanisms could work, and man, give it a shot.
And anecdotally, people are feeling this experience. And so, I mean, I'm much less interested in studies as a as a
in
path.
general.
Yeah, in general. I'm like, I'm much more interested in how I feel and how things affect me more than like what a study tells me.
Right.
Although I totally respect people that can't actually get into alignment until they've seen the data. Like they're like, I can't even try it until I know it's worth trying.
Right.
So I get that. But, you know, this is one of these places that it's probably the data is not going to be here for a while because, you know, these are new treatments. These are new modalities. So like, that's just one of those things that you kind of have to see how it works for you.
Yeah. Check the whole thing out.
Yeah.
And they make it, SaunaSpace, that is, makes it easy to do that.
Totally.
You know, I think they have like a 100-day, I think, return policy or something like that.
Yeah. So you have time to check it out. You have to have time to really see how it works for you. Yeah. It's pretty cool stuff. And also super exciting. Brian has generously gifted us a Photon light to give away to one winner. So we will be hosting that giveaway actually on our Facebook. So if you head on over to Facebook and look at our Be the Wellness page, you can sign up for that giveaway. And the Photon is really cool. It's a single light setup. And, you know, obviously you can use it just for light therapy on your face while you're working, all that good stuff, but it actually helps with some of the flicker stress. And we'll get into what that is more within this episode, but it helps to kind of combat some of the light waves that are coming off all of your, you know, your computer screens or your laptop screens or just all of the light that's coming to you from the various sources that you're working on. So it's pretty cool stuff. And, you know, it's an amazing giveaway, like a $350 light. So super cool add-on to anybody's work situation or even travel situation.
Yeah, totally. So you can go to Facebook to get that, or I'll also put a link in the show notes here.
Yes. And then we also have a 5% off for folks out there who are interested in buying one of the SaunaSpaces or at least getting in and trying it for 100 days. And the code is BTW5. So there'll be a link to the products below as well. Or, of course, you can go to SaunaSpace and just use that at checkout. And lots of good ways to get in and try this technology and see what it does for you. You know, at the end of the day, like, that's really what it comes down to. If it's something that you've had in your sights, and, you know, we even talk about this, we've been talking about getting a sauna for so long, but we don't have room. And so this is really great for folks out there who don't have room. Like us. So super cool solution. And we highly recommend that you just give it a check out and see what you think.
Certainly listen through the podcast. And if you're not like, if your curiosity is not piqued, then, you know, do it anyway.
Or don't. And that's fine too. So we hope you guys enjoy this podcast. And without further ado, here's Brian.
And we're live. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Yeah, totally.
Welcome. It's so good to have you here, Brian. I'm glad we finally got to connect and do this live, which is really exciting for us. We've just begun doing our podcast to our live audience. So you are actually our first guest in this new paradigm.
Yeah. Sweet.
So thanks for, you know, being the trial live podcaster with us. We really appreciate it.
I absolutely love being a part of a pilot project. It'll work out. This is the way. It's nice to see you guys put some faces to some voices.
Yeah. It is always nice, really, to do that. I mean, there is something about audio that, like, you can really drop in when it's like that's the only sense coming in, but it's always nice to see a face and like put the whole thing together.
Yeah, and it's nice for our product too. Our product's very visual. It has like a light to it and a color to it that, you know, you hard to convey that by audio only.
Yeah, totally. Well, and that's a perfect segue. We might as well just jump right into this. So you are, of course, the founder of SaunaSpace, and I mean, you guys are all over the place, and I'm sure that the majority of our listeners are somewhat familiar with what you guys are doing, or at least the concept of near infrared and the whole kind of 9 yards. But why don't you give us a quick rundown on how you got started into this, and like what piqued your interest about this particular modality for health and wellness?
Yeah, my story is a journey of finding a solution to my own health problem. So that's where it began. In the beginning, I selfishly didn't care about anybody else. I had my own problems. They were adrenal fatigue issues. And I thought, hey, if I can't fix this, and the only thing is to take a pharmaceutical drug prescribed by a physician like Accutane for my acne issues, it just seemed foolish. I wanted to address the root cause of the issue, so my research led me online to, searching the search engine for this and that, and trying to find a solution that addressed the root cause, and it was more of a kind of a holistic option where the risks are low. We all want our risks to be low and our benefits and our gains to be maximized. So that's the best value. In my research, I kept coming across sauna and detox, and every human culture, almost every human culture has like a sauna or spa, hot lodge, sweat experience of some kind. So the research backs it up. The studies on sauna for longevity, for health, back it up. And I said, hey, why not? But at the end of my research, I came across the incandescent sauna product. So it's popularized now by a gentleman named Dr. Lawrence Wilson. He's an unlicensed MD and based in Arizona. And his book, Sauna Therapy for Detox and Healing, is pretty popular. But the concept actually dates back to Dr. John Harvey Kellogg of the earliest 20th century. He had a lot of avant-garde things, some crazy things he was doing, but some really avant-garde advanced therapies he was incorporating in his sanitariums. These are pre-American Medical Association like healing spas. They used to be really ubiquitous in America. He one of the ideas he had was, hey, 3 years after the light bulbs were invented in 1891, he said, let's use these light bulbs as the heat source of a sauna, and we'll heal people's maladies. And so he had arc lamps installed in this huge Victorian cabinet that looked really just a gigantic thing. And he wrote a book about it called Phototherapeutics in 1910. So in 1910, we understood that not only is sauna good for your health, there's something about light and these lamps, these incandescent bulbs, that is also helpful. Nowadays, we understand, and we'll talk about it, I'm surely at some point here, the benefits of light therapy and stimulating the mitochondrial healing systems. But for me, it was the idea that this was the original electric sauna, was this incandescent sauna, and it was something that I was able to construct on my own. I'm a kind of a tinkerer guy. And so I said, okay, I'll build one. So my issues were insomnia, adrenal fatigue, acne, kind of like mind racing, heart. And I would also say now I realize brain fog, and a little bit of lethargy. Those are kind of not exclusive, but typical adrenal fatigue issues. I think a lot of people go through that. It's not like I have a full-blown disease. I just have an array of symptoms that's dragging me down, that's limiting my ability to, do whatever, perform in anything. And so I did the sauna, I built it, and 2 sessions before bed, one night, and then the next night, 2 strong sessions, and then right to bed. And it basically cured my insomnia. I was sleeping like a log after that. And that was the aha moment where I said, there's something to this. So I used it for 6 months with discipline, 4 or 5 days a week. And it came out just kind of a new man, as cheesy as it sounds. I was qualitatively better. So I'd wake up, have more energy, more patience, much less irascible and irritated, and just like positive.
Did you make any other changes at that time, Brian, or was it just the saunas and that was it? You could see the difference just from that change.
It was that, and also limiting my bread intake. So going to a more paleo diet, which I now ascribe to the Walls Protocol diet, which is paleo diet with lots of cooked greens. But getting that out was helpful, I think. But that wasn't enough. So the diet, it's a twofold thing. There's a dietary change that needs to happen, and for some people that's easy, and others it's not. But the other thing was the change in what I was doing. It was, I think, definitely the sauna, because in one session, my sleep patterns being improved so dramatically was really has to do with parasympathetic relaxation, and we're designed to be in this relaxed nervous state to sleep. And I wasn't getting there. And, certainly processed food is aggravating that, but all the stresses of modern life kick us out of the nervous state in which we're designed to be most of the day. And so people have adrenal fatigue now, where the systems are not responding to the adrenal hormones anymore. And I was just, that was me. And that was, of course, self-diagnosed. Nobody ever told me I had adrenal fatigue. I had acne and insomnia. And so I was getting recommended those drugs. I didn't take any of those. There was no way. But I think that if you want to step back and say, well, what else contributed? It's a part of getting back to our ancestral lifestyle in the modern context. And so we have to eat what we ate thousands of years ago, biologically. We need a relationship to light that was the way it was thousands of years ago. And then there's this sauna thing, which is kind of unique because there's, maybe the animal, I don't know if there's any research or any investigation of this. I don't know about like pre-human animal species or whatever. It seems to be unique to humans, the idea of doing sauna, doing hot therapy. It has its own special place. It's maybe not something ancestral, but it's something that activates ancestral systems in our bodies. And there are these stress response systems that, when activated in a measured amount, give us all these beneficial effects. It's called hormetic stress, which we do in exercise as well. But here we're doing so many things that we're not doing in exercise, including something we are doing in exercise that kind of to our bodies at the cell level. That's really unique in sauna. And it's a hormetic stress that's passive. So instead of the performance gains, you get healing, you get regeneration, repair, but you do get gains, for example, improved cognitive functioning gains over using sauna use, but you also live longer because you reduce your insulin resistance, you rebuild your protein folding, and many things that are unique to hot therapy, to sweating passively that you don't get by sweating actively in the gym doing exercise.
Right. And so this is kind of that heat shock protein concept, right? This is that hormetic stressor. You're getting things hot enough to fire up these proteins, and then fundamentally, it's doing all the making the positive changes that you're talking about here.
Yeah, and it's age specific, so almost all your cells have heat shock proteins. It's not like just good for the skin. Yeah, it's the same thing with the mitochondrial stimulation. Every cell in the body has that system except red blood cells. So we're talking about rebuilding the body from the ground up. There's really no other therapy that hits at such a specific cellular level fundamentally, and appears from the research to be pretty effective in addressing every type of disease that's studied for it, really. From the autoimmune crowd, there's great evidence in the heart disease category, also in the TBI category for light therapy. Right. There's just so many things in so many different places, and it makes sense if people can just step beyond this paradigm of, I need this, I have this diagnosis, I have this disease, here's the treatment, and just saying it's a complicated system, let's just do things to fix all of it.
Yeah, it's kind of hitting that upstream thing, right? I mean, this is something I think we see a lot certainly in Western medicine, is trying to get down to the specific symptom and then the cause of that specific symptom, instead of just going as far upstream as possible and saying, well, what if we just ate better, had a normal photo period, and got some exercise, and then let the body figure out all the in-betweens, So there's something I want to kind of unpack here a little bit, because our audience is pretty familiar with us blabbing about photo period and circadian rhythms, and how getting bright light first thing in the morning helps anchor your circadian rhythm for the sleep that coming night. And so how do you see the photobiomodulation or the red light therapy fitting in throughout the day? And it might seem sort of counterintuitive to somebody to say that, okay, well, I'm going to have this red light therapy before bed, and it's actually going to help fall asleep, versus the exact opposite, which is what fundamentally the blue light exposure in the morning is doing for you.
Well, we need to understand that not all wavelengths are equal. We have very different effects of different wavelengths. Blue light is high energy. I like to think of, instead of names, using the concept of energy. Blue energy is very high energy. It's right next to ultraviolet on the spectrum. These are the high energy killer wavelengths of the sun. We do have some evolutionary adaptation to it, and you're right. You have to have sunlight and some of the UV exposure to set your clock in the morning and assist with melatonin production during the day. But then you can't get any blue light, unnatural blue light exposure after dark, because that will suppress the release of the melatonin from the pineal gland. So, but that's more of a blue UV in terms of the clock system. If you want to unpack it a little bit, you look at what is sunlight. Less than 10% of sunlight is ultraviolet and blue light. Over 43%, by some measures, a majority even of sunlight is near infrared. So the primary the largest plurality or the primary component in sunlight, what is beneficial to us is near infrared. And near infrared, it's just a sweet spot. It's high enough energy that it doesn't get absorbed by water. That has to do with water absorption versus far infrared wavelengths that don't get in deep because they're absorbed by water. And then also when the near infrared gets in deep, it's absorbed by the cytochrome C. So you have this mitochondrial healing response that you get. For me, the sauna and the red light therapy kind of in their own ways promote parasympathetic relaxation, a relaxed nervous state, their own ways. And there's variables here, and you can obviously make it better if you have a Faraday cage in which you're doing things and you're not counteracted by other things. But basically, we are so starved nowadays of this healing influence, this natural thing that we had every day, solid, like a daily dose through our entire life, that I think that any time of the day you can get it is ideal. And if you had problems like me with insomnia, because for whatever reason, for many different issues, I would also use it right before bed. If you had low energy issues and you're burnt out and you have brain fog issues or kind of cognitive issues, maybe you're getting older and stuff too, I would use it in the morning.
Right.
So I think that using my sauna, because it's red near infrared and the blue is filtered out, it doesn't really affect your sleep cycle, but it does need to fit into this attempt to adhere to ancestral principles in your modern life kind of concept.
Yeah, so it's kind of get your spectrum in where it fits in or where it should, right? So
I think as far as disrupting your circadian rhythm, much more important to not have blue light after dark. That's actually a cool thing about our portable product. I don't know if you can see in the camera here, the Photon. It's just one of our lights. People are using this for environmental therapy. So blue light free lighting after dark. And so you can see with it, you can read by it, but it actually doesn't trigger your blue light, your melanopsin things.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And Brian, you quickly glazed over this, but maybe you could just pedal back a moment and distinguish for folks the difference between near infrared and far infrared. You briefly mentioned it, but if you can just make that distinction for our folks, I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah. So big misconception out there. Near infrared is next to red. So I'm walking on the camera to my left. Is that your right? Well, over here is high energy. Over here is low energy. So your blue light and your ultraviolet's over here, and then you get into violet, indigo, green, yellow, orange, red, and then near infrared's next to red. So it's the highest energy infrared is what we're doing here at SaunaSpace. That's near infrared. That is the infrared that uniquely penetrates bone tissue, for example, has the deepest penetration into the human body is near infrared, much more than red even, actually. As you get lower on the spectrum, you start to get into what's called the water absorption section. Water begins to absorb light in near infrared at about 1100 nanometers. 980 nanometers is the first overtone of water. So once you get into mid infrared and far infrared, your water absorption is basically 100%. All of those photons of those wavelengths are being absorbed by water. Almost the tissue penetration depth is only a few millimeters.
Right.
So a far infrared sauna, not only is it not delivering any photobiomodulation, there's no photobiology associated at all. It's only heat therapy, which is good, but it's only half of what we're doing here at SaunaSpace. Right. It also doesn't heat the body very efficiently. So far infrared is 100% absorbed by water. And since our bodies are full of water, water is this thing that blocks light from getting in. It's a safety mechanism, really.
Right.
Hemoglobin blocks blue light and wavelengths below. Water begins to block wavelengths at 1,000 nanometers and greater. So that optical window in between those two that the wavelengths get in deep is only near infrared. Those are really the two big differences. Near infrared is high energy. It delivers photobiomodulation, and it heats the body radiantly. Right. So we don't use the air around us to heat the body up in a SaunaSpace sauna. With near infrared, you just sit in front of these bulbs. Right. The air just needs to be slightly above body temperature, and you're good. A far infrared sauna, 100% absorbed by water, no photobiomodulation, and those wavelengths are essentially heating the air and heating your surface, and you're getting heated conductively from the outside in. So our typical experience is, hey, you get a customer they always, not all of them, but it's very common to say, I sit in my far infrared sauna for a long time. I don't sweat very well, or it takes me half an hour to start sweating. And frankly, I don't have the time for that, much less, all these other issues with my sauna, with our new bulb, which I'll show you. It's not even on the website, actually. This is our new SaunaSpace light bulb. It's called the thermal light bulb. It's coming out literally in 2 weeks. Nobody knows about this, but
They're on live right now.
it's the world's first light bulb designed kind of specifically for human therapeutic use. Yep. I'll tell you about that in a second. But when we use this bulb in my sauna, you don't preheat, you don't warm up. You get in, you're sweating in 10 minutes vigorously. You're done in 20 minutes. You're done. You've sweated like a lot, like a really strong sweat response, which is the goal. And if you can do that all in 20 minutes versus 45 minutes in a far infrared sauna, then it's just an obvious difference. In spite of what you may read out there on the internet about far infrared, near infrared, this is basic physics. You can look at old Philips light bulb data sheets from like the 60s. And they talk to the farmers about how you want to heat your livestock most effectively. You need to use NIRA, near infrared wavelengths, and then they show, and you can see this on our Sauna Therapy page, a graph of tissue penetration versus wavelength in nanometers. You can see very clearly this. If you're just going to do sauna, you might as well do it with light therapy. And if you're going to do it, you might as well use the most efficient way to heat the body. And these are all near infrared. And more than near infrared, it's really the idea that it's incandescent. So people think, near infrared, versus far infrared. I want a near infrared sauna. It's better because I don't want far infrared. Sunlight also has far infrared, but it only has 2 or 3%.
Right.
So what we're trying to do at SaunaSpace is match our ancestral light kind of experience, which is broad spectrum, incandescent light. So there's all the wavelengths in this big bell curve, power curve, primarily near infrared, a lot of red, some infrared too, and a little bit of far infrared. Nice. For what it's worth.
Yeah. So it's just it seems like it's everything you need and nothing you don't, and then focused on the areas that you're trying to be therapeutic in, right? And which totally makes sense to me.
And we're also, because you asked about the circadian rhythm before. I should say the caveat is that it is different than sunlight in that these bulbs don't emit any blue or UV.
Right.
So sunlight is kind of a double-edged sword that we're trying to balance our relationship with. We've removed it from this, but left that broad healing component that it's really the near infrared for light and for heat. It's the heat therapy and the light therapy, which, by the way, ancestrally, we always got light and heat therapy together pretty much because the light in nature is all incandescent.
Right.
And so even the fireplace, it's not just the heat that makes you feel good there. There's a little bit of mitochondrial stimulation going on.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a lot going on with fires. It's one of those things that seems to be completely universal. I mean, we travel the world frequently, and everywhere you go, if there's a fire, there'll be people standing around and staring at it. There's something to that, that beyond the heat, beyond any of it, there's just something very mesmerizing that just kind of draws us into that whole thing. So
it really is, and we've lost that practice nowadays. Like back in the day, how often did you have a fire, or if you had a fireplace, or just doing a campfire outside? And you just don't see that much anymore. Even though it was ancestral, we did it all the time. And so there's another reason to just have these lamps at night. It kind of returns. There's something very ancestral about it. I think you're right. Something very primal about it.
Well, it just feels calming, and unfortunately now we all gather around the TV, which is the exact opposite, right? You're getting all the worst light plus all this stimulation of dinosaurs eating you or whatever's going on. It's like fires all the wrong triggers.
I know. When people ask me or ask us, where am I going to put the sauna? What am I going to do with it? I usually suggest removing the TV and putting it there.
Yeah. It's actually a pretty good idea. So speaking of just of other saunas, so I've done a fair amount of research on trying to understand, and I think there's a lot of research out there on regular, like the Swedish sauna studies, right? I mean, where these guys were in like 175 degree, just the regular dry sauna kind of cooking you experiments, cooking you in a barrel. But they were able to see some pretty incredible growth hormone release and some stuff like that I know folks are interested in, myself included. And I'm wondering if there's been studies comparing infrared versus dry heat for that same sort of stimulus.
Right. Would you get the same amount of growth hormone effect? So there's definitely not as ubiquitous. Most of the sauna studies are done with wet saunas and finished saunas. And then there are a portion that are done with far infrared saunas.
Right.
If you're asking about saunas with incandescent bulbs, there are virtually no studies because the product didn't really even exist, even though in theory it's the first electric sauna product.
Yeah.
SaunaSpace is probably, really I'd say we're responsible for commercializing it and making something that is not negligent design. That's not some garage project, but there aren't studies. What I usually say to people to get them thinking about this, is it's the same thing with light therapy.
Right.
The evolutionary basis for the light therapy is our experience with sunlight, but all of the studies are done with LEDs. But when I say all, I mean probably 90%. There are fluorescent light bulb light therapy studies. There are incandescent light bulb light therapy studies. And what we see is a one-to-one relationship of if you have this wavelength and enough power, you get this cellular response. With the sauna, you need to look at what's happening to the person and not what's doing the job, not what's the heating modality, but what's happening. And if I sit in a 180 degree wet finished sauna that's like sweltering hot and claustrophobic, and I can barely see you, it's so humid in there, that is using this conductive heat to really rapidly as possible, heat the body up. What happens in the end, though, is the person only experiences a 2 or 3, maximum probably 4 degree core temperature rise. And so what you see actually in the studies is you get similar biological responses whether you put someone in a hot bath or in a sauna, or regardless of the heat source of the sauna, whether it's wet sauna or dry sauna. If you can provoke that 3 degree temperature rise, you get the results you're seeing. And you also see it for like lots of Dr. Rhonda Patrick's work is with people actively exercising and being heated by some modality and seeing the added effects to that. And I think that it doesn't really matter how you heat the body. If you look at all these ancient traditions, some were Korean hot pools. You would go in and sit in a natural hot springs. Others was the Native American sweat lodge, where you got inside and used wet air, or the finished sauna. So you see different modalities and they're achieving the same effect. Heating up the body hot enough that it begins sweating to cool off, which is a kind of a visible indication that at the cell level, the heat shock proteins are being produced.
Right.
And there's other things too. There's other benefits to it that are, beyond just that, they're pretty universal if you just heat up the body enough in a passive state, not while you're exercising. So, So yeah, I mean, that's basically the answer. There are no studies, but the indication is, from 10,000 customers that we have that, hey, this is working for me. And what I think that's interesting about what we do here from an accessibility standpoint is that a older person with some physical handicaps of some kind, or some limitations of some kind, or just sensitivity, can't use a finished sauna at all.
Right.
And they probably can't use a high EMF regular far infrared sauna either. They really just are not tolerant. So if someone's not heat tolerant, but the sauna clearly is going to improve their condition, what do you do for them?
Right.
Like the Walls protocol community, the MS community, those folks are some of the most heat sensitive. And so we want to do full body hyperthermia for them, but in something that they can, that's manageable and tolerable. And this seems to be it. So we're achieving the same body temperature increase from a very low ambient air temperature in a very tolerable way. And I think very much that when you do use the incandescent technology to heat the body, that photobiomodulation is helping the detox. It's helping those heat shock proteins. It's giving more cellular energy. It's doing things at the cell level, the vasodilation effects that clearly make the detox less energetically intensive and more effective. Right. And I think that all results in it being easier, more tolerable, and then more accessible for people. We're a little more mainstream now, a little more well-known, but certainly our beginning and one of our primary missions is to increase access to this. So typically many of our customers are some of the most heat sensitive or the most electromagnetically sensitive, chemically sensitive, there are folks that are have lots of co-infections and other things like MS. They quite often have a Lyme co-infection.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So these people can't go to the gym and get heat therapy there, and they can't go to a finished sauna, and yet this approach works just as well, probably better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's like the thing that's going to work best is the one you can actually do, right?
Yeah.
If it's not accessible in any way or feasible. No.
I actually have a question.
I agree.
Along these lines, because, we've had a couple of guests on before. We've talked about Ayurveda, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's an ancient Indian sort of health practice, if you will. And there's different types of doshas or body types, and one of them is actually, it's contraindicated to overheat the body. It's called actually a pitta, which is what Adam and I both are. Have you ever been asked about this, about the different types of doshas, or if there's a different type of body that actually doesn't respond as well to heat therapy? And I don't even mean from a medical standpoint, but from just sort of a natural biological.
Sure. No, it's a great question. I haven't been asked that specifically. I am familiar with the systemology of it. Mm-hmm. But I do. Certainly in the beginning, I answered all the customer phone calls here, potential calls for the first 3 or 4 years, probably 20 or 30,000 calls. I talked to all the customers in the beginning, and still I'm here every day. There are a lot of people out there that without having that system be attributed to them and then being categorized as such would call themselves as heat sensitive. Right. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from a conventional medical perspective, people with Hashimoto's and tachycardia and autoimmune issues are typically pretty heat sensitive, and so the doctors will contraindicate heat therapy. Mm-hmm. Even doctor, I don't know what she says currently as of today, but I know that in some cases she does contraindicate heat therapy, sauna therapy for certain MS patients. And she's a healthcare provider. Obviously, that's her that's her role. I don't give medical advice. I'm not a healthcare provider, but yeah. I think that for what I'm getting at is there are people who think that they're heat sensitive mm-hmm. when what they just need to do is get out of that homeostasis. It's toxic, and like you're this cold bean, or you're cold or you're cool. This will heat you up. It will make you sweat while other sweat-inducing modalities may have failed. Mm-hmm. And I have yet to meet the person who used our product, during the whole trial and like with discipline that didn't have enough benefit that they kept it. Mm-hmm. Right. I really not met that. And I met a lot of people who do. I had one customer who suffered from some Hashimoto's and shingles, reoccurring shingles infections, and she said her resting body temperature was 93 degrees. Oh, wow. And that using our sauna for a month or so had restored her resting temperature almost up to normal, 98.6. I think that some people get stuck in it, and there's some, it's contraindicated for pregnant women, but basically everybody else seems to benefit from it. And I think nowadays there's more necessity for the detox component and the protein reforming component of sauna therapy than ever before. We have a toxic burden, a toxic load put on us that is, didn't exist, is unimaginable 100 years ago chemically, and then electromagnetically today as well. Mm-hmm. We're really reaching an interesting point now. I just watched a Mercola talk where he said we have a billion times more microwave signal now than we had 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of environmental pressures that are really modern and unique and unnatural that make sauna not really a luxury so much as a necessity to keep oneself healthy in this really toxic world and this really toxic modern lifestyle and the toxic indoor environment that we've touched on.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the digital toxicity, for lack of a better term with some of this, because there's a few things that have come up recently that I'm woefully underread on, but I'm assuming that you'll probably be able to shed some light on this. And one of them that I find most interesting, especially as we transition more and more to LED lighting, is this idea of flicker stress and what's going on with that. So can you expand on that concept at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So rapidly flickering light is associated in the literature with primarily adverse biological effects. You have neurological issues it can cause. It could cause epilepsy. That's like the most obvious thing. For children on the spectrum or with autism, they tend to be more aggravated by it. So there's clinical it's not like 100% thorough, but there's definitely some strong research in support of the idea that this is toxic. And it's definitely unnatural. There are no sources of flickering light, by the way, in nature.
Right.
Everything is direct current flowing at you all the time. And there's nothing that shuts on and off like a strobe light. So that's the most dramatic example. Stand in front of a strobe light and see if it's comfortable to you.
Right.
So the LED lighting above us that we use in the modern, all the modern environments now, the alternating, that's wired into our electricity, all this stuff is wired into AC, alternating current. And so the LEDs, since the United States is on, getting a little technical here.
Yeah.
We have 60 hertz electrical supply.
Right.
And so the current changes twice every second because of that. It's a variable alternating current. So what happens is the LED light above our heads flickers 120 times a second.
Right.
And flickering is when it shuts off and turns on. And so it goes from 0 to 100% twice a second. So it's a flickering, pulsing light. And I can actually show you it real quick here. So this is a flicker meter. You can get these, it just measures the pulsing rate of light. And let me see if I still got my fluorescent example. I never turn this on otherwise, but let's see if I can. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
So you can measure that. Oh yeah, by the way, with the SaunaSpace bulb.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's picking.
It's not even low. It's there's nothing. It's silence, hissing. That's what the sunlight sounds like.
Right.
So whether it's fluorescent or LED, fluorescents flicker 400 to 600 times a second, which is less aggravating than LED, and they only shut off to from 100 to 30%. Suffice it to say that the LEDs are 100% to 0 on the flicker, so it's a more dramatic flicker, and it's slow enough that it definitely messes us up. And so people report headaches and epilepsy issues and other neurological issues and sleep dysfunction kind of issues, and it's a cumulative exposure thing.
Right.
And the commercial code now everywhere requires LED or fluorescent lighting for energy efficiency, and so we're forcing the average American worker to work under this light 8 hours a day. And so you can measure it. There is basis in the literature in the scientific studies to suggest that it's bad for our health, and there's a viable alternative, which again is right here, and we had it since 1891, and it works great.
Yeah. And
what happened when we made LEDs and fluorescents is we took out the healing near-infrared component that provides heat and light therapy, and for this god of energy efficiency that we worship, but we didn't consider the health effects, and so there are deleterious health effects in not having this healing light. And then it came with all these other again bad, harmful effects like flickering and the fact that it's a blue light. You've probably talked about blue light with your audience a lot. It's something that we got in its own minor percentage from sunlight.
Right.
But we didn't have any light sources that only emit blue photons or emit like 30, a large percentage of the emission is blue.
Yeah.
So it's.
And so that kind of brings me to the next question about the flicker stuff. So, I mean, everybody's pretty hip to the idea that all of our devices are really strong in blue light, because that's what makes, so your iPhone, your laptop, your TV, all of that seems like that higher percentage of blue light is what gives some of it its brilliance, so to speak. So are we seeing flickers, similar flicker situation with computer screen? Like I know, so for example, my computer monitor is a LED computer monitor.
Yeah.
Right. So would it be-
yeah, absolutely. So the answer is yes. There are ways to mitigate it. They're kind of expensive, but just suffice it to say that your standard wired electronic that has a screen on it is flickering. You can put in direct current drivers, and you can do other things to like mitigate that. So you can measure screens, and you can measure the degree of flicker with a nicer flicker meter than this, and you can get like qualitative analysis. And there are screens that are rated for better. There's these new screens that are low eye strain they're marketed as low eye strain from the big brands. And essentially what they're doing is they're modulating that flicker. So it's, instead of it bouncing like this, it's like the peak of the waveform is smaller. So it's less dramatic, so it's less registered. But every screen, computer screen, laptop screen, the little LED light on your alarm clock is like tripping you out, stressing you out right as you go to bed. Even those little tiny lights, like all the screens and the mic I'm talking you through has a little LED on the front. Yeah. And those are, depending on how it's wired, those can be really low quality. And so you can hear from this meter and other flicker meters really a natural irregular flickering, which, or if a device is not working properly, it can change the flicker, the quality and the tone and the waveform of the flicker such that it's more aggravating. Right. But everything is, and you would think, oh, well, I'll just get rid of the alternating current, right? I'll just use batteries. But the new, for the example, the new iPhone and the new Samsungs that are OLED, organic LED, it's like that technology flickers extremely badly. And it's really dramatic. And that is something where, it's right here. It's 2 feet from your face and people are using it all day long. So the flickering light goes right into the same bag as blue light, artificial blue light, and man-made so-called non-native EMF or electromagnetic stress. These are all environmental nervous stressors. Right. They stress out the nervous system. They put us into sympathetic dominance, which makes us think we're responding to an environmental threat, and we're not. And it all, you've probably talked about that a lot. It messes our hormonal issues. It puts us in a stress state. It's something that, and in our ancestral environment, we didn't have. Our body is geared to respond to those things really strongly and forcefully to like save our lives. Mm-hmm. But instead of having a big bear in the room, you have all these tiny little, what do you call them? Like microscopic environmental threats that accumulate to this state in which we live in now, where there is no escape. There is no escape from the stress. Even if you get rid of the blue light and you get rid of the flicker, you're all incandescent in your home, and you still have the cell phone signal disrupting your body, opening your calcium, your voltage gated calcium ion channels, and it's really inescapable. But flickering light is, because it's so ubiquitous, and because we use screens all day long, and like what we're interfacing through right now, we get such a large dose of it that it's something to consider. Yeah. Something to be aware of.
Yeah. Well, and if brands are already starting to create products that minimize it, you know what I mean? There's got to be a reason, or it has to be a plausible enough idea that people would bite on that. Why do I want this more expensive monitor? Well, because it's not going to produce the eye strain, and this is something that is really significant. And as Vanessa and I have talked about before, like becoming health coaches was one of the least healthy things that we've ever done, because like we do distance coaching for a large part, and a lot of content creation. We're nonstop. Like right now, we're underneath the glow of 15 different varieties of LED and fluorescent light boxes with all of this stuff around, and it's a real thing. And I've noticed my eyes get tired at night, like in a way that just it never was the case before, when I didn't spend as much time in front of a computer screen, So I think this stuff's real, and it's a matter of
it's real. It's real. We myself included, but I think it's part of the human nature to have this, or maybe it's just our modern culture, this arrogance that we are independent of nature. We're independent of light. We're independent of the cell phone signal. They don't affect our biology. They're merely, and these modern technologies improve our quality of life, but really we can't live without it nowadays. And so it's almost like, well, we can't live without it. We can't think of it. And you know what? It's not affecting our biology anyway. Right. But it turns out it really does. And the research is really showing that. And you see the market shifting, even mainstream, in acceptance of these stressors and these issues, and needs to address it and mitigate it.
So Brian, how is the SaunaSpace, or the single light, or how is that actually helping to diffuse the flicker stress, or is it more just on the back end to try to deal with the aftermath of that?
Well, let me see if I can show you here. Okay, so see if I can get this. Remember this? So this is flickering.
What?
So what's happening?
It's like
Adam, what's happening? So what I theorize is happening is the non-flickering photons coming from this. This is alternating current too, but the filament is so hot, then as the current alternates, it doesn't have a chance to cool down.
Right.
So there's no flicker. It just stays, it's glowing the whole time.
Yeah.
These kind of healthy non-flickering photons are drowning out the effect of the flickering photons from the fluorescent bulb and creating this like happy, natural photonic state right here in front. And it goes out to, about 2 or 3 feet at least in terms of the flicker effect. So what I theorize is that this is has great potential for environmental therapy. If we can't get rid of our fluorescent or LED lights, hey, we can cancel out that effect.
Yeah.
And certainly if you look at photobiomodulation research, what's the antidote to blue light? Red, near infrared. In terms of red near infrared has a protective effect against the damaging free radical formation of blue and ultraviolet.
Right.
So what I suggest too is that this can be used to mitigate and kind of reverse the stressful effects of blue light exposure that we necessarily get.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I use it. This is not just for like showing you guys this rig. You can buy it on the website. It's a custom monitor arm for it. But I basically work with this all day long. It's only on my face for a short period of the day, maybe 10 minutes here and there. All day long, though, it's basically sitting here tilted up, giving this photonic effect and giving the ambiance in the room. Yeah. And I work with it all day because, like you, I have a couple studio lights. I have low wattage incandescent lighting in my office to work with because I don't like it too bright. But to talk to you and with the video, I have a bunch of studio fluorescent lights up.
Right.
Yeah.
and anyway, the monitors, the screens, everything is such that I think that's what's going on here, and people are using it for that as well. So it's not just about, hey, let's make lifestyle changes to minimize our exposure to these stressors. We're getting exposed to them no matter what. We're drinking the Roundup, the glyphosate is in our food and our water no matter what. What can we do to reverse that trend, push back on that? And that's really, sauna every day or with frequency. And then I think this in the office is really cool, especially with this new bulb I got.
Yeah.
Super cool. And this is the Photon, right?
This is the Photon light. This is like the fixture that the bulb goes in. But this is actually my little baby here. You can see it.
Oh, yeah.
So I spent 3 years developing this. So this is has a couple fascinating features in comparison to the heat lamp light bulb you buy at the hardware store. That one is machine blown and red dyed on the inside and of low therapeutic irradiance. This is actually mouth blown and hand rolled. If you've ever seen mouth blown glass. So this is a handmade light bulb.
Oh, wow.
And it's made with red stained glass instead of, that's why it has this beautiful like ruby red custom color. And it's tempered glass for durability. But the most exciting thing is on the inside. What you don't see is a filament that has been redesigned to basically run hotter and therefore emit a higher percentage of near-infrared red wavelengths. So apples to apples, all that to say that this bulb compared to a hardware regular light bulb, this emits 3.5 to 5 times the therapeutic near-infrared irradiance and a lot more red too than an average bulb. So, and it also runs hotter. So the SaunaSpace system basically runs on a custom-made light bulb now that's coming out in 2 weeks that delivers you. It's still an ancestral therapeutic irradiance, but it and not too high, but definitely higher and hotter, which makes a more effective therapy in a quicker fashion. So that's the heart of the product. That look, this stuff works. It's been used in human culture for 100 years. And it turns out that as its use in the sauna makes it the best type of sauna. And so I've been privately, working on this development of this new bulb for many years, and it's literally coming out next month. It was really hard to get it done right. But
Awesome. Congrats. Amazing.
Yeah, where do you even find people to mouth blow glass?
yeah, no doubt. And so it's actually a handmade bulb.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
If you just look at videos of mouth blown glass on the internet, it's really a labor intensive. It's really a thing. It's really an art to make them. Nobody does that anymore, other than certainly not in a commercial fashion. So, but we got it done. And this is purpose built for human use instead of just whatever. So it's really a next level thing. I have got some of our big kind of customers using it, and all the feedback's been amazing. So
awesome. So before we go, I want to actually just talk about the traditional SaunaSpace. And if you can just kind of talk, because there's kind of a protocol that goes with it, right? Like you're actually rotating within the space. Maybe you can just, for the listeners, kind of lay out what a typical session would look like inside of the more traditional sauna tent space.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Photon light because it's right here in the camera. But that's a targeted therapy. That's an environmental therapy. That's not SaunaSpace's main product. Our main product is the full body hyperthermia, the full body sauna. But it's very different looking if you compare it to other saunas. So it's not just using a totally different technology, incandescent. It also looks like a traveling Arab tent or a Bedouin tent. It has a minaret-shaped curtained entrance. You pull the curtain open. Inside, it's kind of a tribal, back to nature vibe. It's all canvas. It has a bamboo floor. It has a steampunk-looking light fixture that has 4 250-watt of our bulbs and these big protective Faraday guards on them. And you basically sit in front of this 4-lamp array about 1 to 2 feet away on a stool that we also handcraft here in this tent. And you're naked, and there's a towel on the stool and the floor, and you're getting immediate light and heat therapy. And you basically sit in there and rotate every 5 minutes. Do about a 20-minute session. You can increase that if you want a little bit, and that's your session. I mean, the whole point of any sauna is to get in there, get your sweat on. But you'll find that in a SaunaSpace session, you do your 20 minutes, and instead of you looking at the watch and saying, dang, am I done with this sauna session yet? It's really captivating. It really has an embryonic kind of back to, it's just a really comforting inside. And I think the light therapy helps with that a lot. So basically that's it. The lights are on one side. You rotate in front of them at least once or twice. And you sweat like any other sauna, but you'll find you'll do it without preheating. You'll do it more efficiently than you've ever done before. And if you have an opportunity to try out our Faraday product, we have a upgraded sauna that has a grounded stainless steel liner system, basically in the whole thing, and the curtain. And that is truly an escape. It's I like to describe it as kind of quiet to the senses inside. It's a real rarity, because even if you go camping nowadays, you've got that cell phone signal, which you don't think about. But that when you get really far out and you get to that special place where there is no cell phone signal, and then stay there for a while, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, there's something different here.
Yeah.
And so we've recreated that inside of the sauna, and it's almost its own therapy. So you have the light therapy, you have the sauna therapy. Okay, all well and good. But when you have the Faraday protection, you have this deprivation therapy of sorts. That it's definitely, we probably don't have much time, but all of the EMF stress that's man-made from man-made wireless signals of all kinds, we see in the research now that definitely counteracts the ability of the body to detox, the ability of the body to repair and regenerate. So if you don't have full-blown Faraday protection for your sauna, you're kind of bathing in this electrosmog, this nervous stress, while you're trying to de-stress and heal, and it's just really not ideal. So it's really an unusual thing. It's hard to describe even with words. You have to feel it, and so that's why we usually we give people a long time to try, and it's free shipping and stuff like that. So because it really does grow on you, and then all of a sudden you can't live without it. And I don't have any data for that. I only have a minority of the customers that have the new product.
Right.
Many thousands of customers who have the basic sauna, and the stories are amazing. My personal healing story was in the basics with the prototype version of our sauna. So definitely the base product works, and that comes with its own grounding mat too now. So you have different types of electric fields, and they're just different ways to dealing with it. And suffice it to say that if you're not dealing with it, it's not good enough anymore, not for any healing space at all.
Right, more like almost it's sort of maintenance versus optimization, I guess. It's like taking, with
there's a penalty. Why would you do a therapy that has a penalty? So you're 3 steps forward, 1 step back. No, I don't want to do anything like that. That's the same problem with chemical solutions. Right. You get the symptom reduction at the expense of all these different side effects.
Totally.
So, we don't want that. And I think as a final note to our design, you asked about the experience of it, this going inside of SaunaSpaces. There's no Bluetooth track lighting. There's no Bluetooth enabled stereo speakers. There's no track lighting. There's no gadgetry, and there's actually no glass door either. So once you go inside, your family, your children, your phone, all those things are outside and they're out of your vision. There's this research that just having the cell phone in the periphery of your view causes increase in cortisol, stress, and things like that. So we're so overstimulated and overstressed all day long. When do we get a time really truly to ourselves without anything, including the electromagnetic smog that's all around now? And that's really the rarity, and that's why it's designed that way. I don't want you to sit inside the sauna and look out into the stressful world.
Right.
So it's very intentionally minimalist, and like it's an escape. It's a cocoon. It gets you away from all that, and that's really something else that we need nowadays too. And when we want to tell people meditation's good for you, and you need to be meditating, you need an environment in which to meditate.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, that sounds like a perfect meditation spot.
Well, and we're all so busy that it's like, and this is a large part of what we do in our coaching is, we have all of these things that we want people to bring back into their life, sitting quietly or meditating and spending time doing this and spending time doing that. And the reality is everyone's just busy, so the more things that you can combine into one spot, so if you can go and sit in your sauna space and get your heat therapy, get your light therapy and meditate and knock all of that out in, a 20-minute session, it's like, yeah.
Pretty killer. Yeah.
Do that.
Brian, really quick, can you tell me about just the actual setup of it? Because I know it's really easy. It's like, it's a pretty small setup. It takes up pretty small space. Like maybe just tell people in practicality what it takes to actually have one of these in your house.
Yeah, so it plugs into 110 or 240. It just plugs in the wall, and it fits in about a 4 foot by 4 foot square. It's 2 feet wide on the back, so it's kind of a trapezoid in shape. But it sets up like a kid's fort. I don't know how else to describe it. It's real easy. You with little turnkey hand operated clamps, you clamp the light panel to the poles, and then you kind of erect the frame like a Tinker Toy, and the covers dress over the top like a bed sheet. And you want to make sure to hook your grounding cable up to your mat correctly, but it's all, it's really painstakingly manufactured and crafted so that it's easy to set up. So I can set up in 5 minutes. It might take you longer than that to figure it out the first time, but it's a quick setup. It sets up like a toy house. You can throw it in the closet in the summer. The whole thing is 65 pounds, including the 10-pound stool. So you can move it around in the room. Each component is manageable, even if, you have some physical limitations. Most people can set up on their own. But the whole thing is completely self-contained. So it fits in the corner nicely, but it has its own bamboo floor, so it can go right on carpet. It can go right in anywhere. And it's not like people are thinking this huge cabinet that takes three people to build and is never moving from wherever you set it up at. This is something that's mobile. You can let your friend borrow it. Put it, like I said, put it in the closet for the summer. It's going with you to your next apartment that you rent out. It's a much more modern approach, just design wise. Forget the superiority of the therapy or whatever. Yeah. People don't want, like you say, people don't have time. People don't want more burdens. They want less.
Right.
So I want my sauna set up pretty much 95% of the time, but there's some times where it needs to move or it needs to go out of the way or whatever. But essentially you do want a space to set it up because, hey, we don't have any time. If we want to hit like 10 therapies in one, like we're talking about here. You need to have it where you can just get in, do your session, go out, take your shower, go on with your day, and make it a part of your lifestyle. You'll find that unlike, well, I don't know what you guys recommend with your health coaching, but I'm sure you recommend a lot of things. And people, after a while, they're just like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm already stressed out. I'm already in a bad state and I got to invest more. So this, you sit on your lazy butt, and, you know, in there, and you do all these things and you qualitatively better. And I would, it has a calibrating effect too. I would say it's also kind of an enticement for people to try it out. Is you sit in, especially in the Faraday product, but you sit in there and you do your session afterwards. You have, in my experience, and others have reported it as well, greater desire to live healthy. You know, you have a greater desire to do that thing you need to do to make that meal or gather my affairs for my food for the day. So, and all the way to like just being nicer to people and having more patience and things like that. It's really unique how it puts you into your optimal state no matter what. And I don't know much about this, but I heard the guy from Quicksilver Scientific, the owner of Quicksilver Scientific, talking about how intermittent fasting in sauna is kind of like nirvana. So those are the keys, and you do those kind of things, and it's something that it's really something where you can knock so many birds out with one stone that, and it gives you energy to do these other things, because we do need to do some kind of vigorous exercise of some kind. And we do need to eat natural food, and that takes a lot of time and investment to deal with. So
awesome. Well, it sounds amazing. I'm ready. Yeah. And for folks out there who are interested in learning more, where can they find more about the products, Brian?
Of course, saunaspace.com, and you can just Google SaunaSpace. If I've written a lot of articles, if you want to dive deep into the science, and there's some other podcasts too that are out there, and you can see those on YouTube. But all the product information, everything else is all on saunaspace.com, and I have a lot of articles that have inline citation for folks who like to read the white papers. Yeah. That's great. It's out there. And it's really a thing where you just got to try it out. It's not like any sauna experience you've ever had. It's not like really any experience you've ever had. And it's for those who look at exercise and they're like, and there's an effort involved that I think people are intimidated by. This is something you can do privately in your home and have all these things and maybe achieve the same goal in some respects. Not to mention that some people who are obese, which is a lot of people, they all have insulin resistance.
Right.
And so you put them in a gym and try to get them to work out, and they don't lose weight. And it's because they're so insulin resistant. Their insulin receptors are so broken down. And so sauna therapy will reduce their insulin resistance by improving their insulin signaling, about the protein refolding stuff we talked about. And so if you want someone to actually lose weight and get on the right path, SaunaSpace or just what we're doing here might be more of a primary tool to start out in the beginning to help people get to a point where they actually have the energy and the enthusiasm to go to the gym and do vigorous exercise.
Just the cellular receptivity at that point.
Or just I hear a lot more than anything nowadays, the energy levels. People are bummed out about their energy levels, and that does really just affect everything.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
and you alluded to this earlier, but there's something about it it's like it's just step one. I'm going to start doing something healthier for myself. Well, this is a very low barrier to entry thing to do. You know what I mean? It's like I set this thing up in my house, and here's step one for me living my best life. I'm going to dedicate 20 minutes a day to doing this. This is something that you can do. That's a much easier step than joining the gym and changing your diet and learning how to sleep again and doing all of the things at once, Yeah. And so I think like bang for your buck, or bang for your time, I guess, this is a great way to see some potentially significant benefit without really having to, get too far outside your comfort zone, which, yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, and it's, I think ultimately in American culture, where it's still very individualist. People want their own stuff, their own thing, and they want their privacy. Right. So it's your butt only on that stool. It's in your house. You take a shower in your own shower afterward. If it's not like this public thing at the gym. for some people, I think, again, barriers to entry. We want something that people will actually try to use. And that's also a primary, one of my primary goals since before even all of this was to make something that people would enjoy using and not just be a function that is something they have to do for their health, but it's something that is enjoyable aesthetically, meditatively, introspectively, and stuff like that, not to mention all the rest.
Right.
Awesome. So cool. And we're so stoked because we've partnered up with you to give away one of your Photon lights, which is super amazing. So one lucky winner out there is going to reap the benefits of that awesome light and also simultaneously reduce their flicker stress.
Yeah.
And so folks, you can look actually here in the description and enter that. And also we will be announcing that in all the various places, Instagram and Facebook and in our newsletter. But we're super excited that we got to finally connect with you, Brian. This has been super informative, and we're really excited to actually try one for ourselves. It's like, to be totally honest, my opinion or my thought before I really talked to you today was that SaunaSpace was really just a smaller version of any regular sauna that you would find out there. I didn't really understand like the intimacy of it or really the design of it and the way it was set up and, kind of getting the light therapy and the near infrared therapy. Like I just really didn't understand that. So it's been really highly illuminating for me.
Illuminating.
And people ask that constantly. I hear that too is, hey, can I take my red light therapy panel into my sauna so I can get both at the same time? It's like, well, yeah, actually, if you use the right technology, like what we're doing, you don't have to do that. It's built into the sauna session. And they're right to think, well, I want photobiomodulation in my sauna session. They're thinking along the right lines. Right. But you need not use two, as it were, inferior technologies, I'm going to call them, when you have one unifying technology that delivers the light and the heat and really in a more natural form. So it's definitely fair. I think we're onto something here. There's a sea of an ocean of sauna products out there. And how is it that SaunaSpace came out of nowhere and we're really becoming the go-to in many ways. And I think it's a totality of our design and our technology that's come together in a really unique offering.
Awesome. Yeah. And it fits in a small space, which we have, which is very cool. It's been actually, Adam, our listeners have been listening to us talk about a sauna for years and talking about how it's really like the final frontier and something we can't do because we just don't have the space in our house. We live in a studio in Venice Beach and it's just,
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, we almost joined a Globo gym just to have access.
Yeah.
We couldn't do that either.
So that's really for people who don't have a lot of space. That's a huge deal. It's
a common problem, and our product is the best, I think, to address balancing like the need to have some space to sit in and feel good in. But yeah, having to be space saving. And like you said, with the giveaway, someone will win one Photon. And so even if you're so small, you don't have a room for the sauna, people are using I have some traveling customers who only have the Photon light, and that's a heck of a lot better than having nothing at all and just being, at the status quo that people are at. That new Photon light will come with our new light bulb, even though it's not officially on the website yet.
Awesome.
It's
awesome.
happening.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that people think of biohacking, which I would certainly think this is somewhere in that neighborhood, as like a luxury in a way, but it really is becoming a necessity. Like all of us actually, I think on some level need to become biohackers to understand how to combat the everyday stresses that are coming our way. And this is certainly one of those things. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it, because it really is like we're combating the negative effects of the conveniences that we have. Right. You know what I mean? It's like everything that gets more and more convenient comes with some negative effect, right? You want your
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. The word biohacking gets a bad rap because it's hacking, which is cheating. Right. But it's really not that. It's we want to benefit from the increases in quality of life that modern technology has brought, and yet at the same time understand that there are problems with it that we need to hack. Yeah. We need to biohack. Basically, biohacking is we're trying to trick the body into it thinking that it's in its ancestral context so that it works optimally.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of, just because you can't smell it or see it doesn't mean it's not there. And with the EMF stuff and the flicker and many of the things we've talked about, it takes measured action and thought and really investment as well to kind of deal with all these things in your life and your habits themselves. I started putting my phone in airplane mode for a while now. Once I get home, no matter what, I don't care if somebody's robbing, the shop, I'm not answering the phone. I'm with my family and I'm present. Mm-hmm. And I use my phone so much for work that it's scary. It's been scary for me to see how much of a hold it has over me.
Totally. No,
so
we took the dogs for a walk the other day, and I walked out of the house and I realized I didn't have my phone, and it was like this whole thing, like, do I go back? Like, what do I do? And I'm like, I'm walking around the block. It's fine. So yeah, it definitely, I think all of us have that sort of, it's just become another appendage, so to speak, for us.
So there's all these modern technologies, they come with caveats. Some of them come with big problems, and finding that balance. And biologically, where we need to be what nature was before all this. And if you just take that general principle in mind, then that's the biggest takeaway from what we're talking about. The more we get back to our ancestral principles, the healthier, longer lives we live.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's what's up. All right. Well, folks, you can find more about Brian and SaunaSpace at saunaspace.com. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can follow them on Instagram, right? And Facebook. Do you have a Facebook as well? I'm assuming you do.
Yep. It's all SaunaSpace. Hashtag SaunaSpace, at SaunaSpace on Instagram.
We also have an awesome 5% off coupon.
Coupon's the word. Yep.
Coupon code. So, and that's also right here in the description. So if folks want to check that out, you can go shopping on the SaunaSpace site and get 5% off any of their products. So lots of opportunities to get in and start living like you're a caveman.
A caveman with your own son.
Yes, exactly. Awesome, Brian. Thank you.
Well, if you're a man, it's a man cave. If you're a woman, it's a healing oasis.
God, that's such a solid distinction. It really is. Like oasis.
Healing oasis. I love it. It's a goddess tent, right? Awesome.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me on the show. It's been great. We hit a lot of good points.
Yeah, definitely. All right. We'll see you soon. Have a great week.
Bye.
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 All right, folks, we hope you enjoyed that conversation. We really went on a deep dive, and there was a lot of information that we covered, but it was really important stuff. And I think it gives you a really good compass to navigate this whole sauna, light therapy, near infrared, far infrared, all the things, flicker
Faraday
stress,
cage.
all the things. It's like, okay, if you weren't worried enough about what you were doing or not doing.
Yeah.
We hope that we at least, peaked a few more things that you could possibly worry about.
Yeah. Well, but not just worry about, but there's like a reasonable solution.
Totally.
And that's,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And couple of announcements before we wrap up. We have one individual female spot at our Costa Rica retreat, which is coming up in November.
Yes.
One single spot left. So if any of you single ladies out there, or even not single ladies, but individual ladies.
Not single ladies who are traveling alone.
Yes, yeah. Solo female travelers. We've got one spot in Costa Rica, and we've got 3 spots left in Montana. So, those spots are selling out quickly. If you want to join us on one of our adventures this year, time is a-wasting. Yeah. Sisters? I would say sisters and brothers, but mostly I'm talking about sisters right now.
Yeah, it's true. Those are all the spots that we have as individual females.
Brothers, you're going to have to wait till something else happens. All right, guys. We hope you have a great week, and we'll be back with you next week. We'll see ya.
Bye.